reason they didn't go farther was to avoid making too much noise while moving through the plants. If the incoming creature was only traveling in their direction, they didn't need to risk being discovered. It wasn't a huge tree, so they weren't completely hidden, but they could at least flatten themselves against its roots, so they didn't stick out too much. The 5 of them lay there waiting, holding their breath, and praying the creature would go in a different direction. Unfortunately, their wish didn't come true. The creature appeared in the party's line of sight. Henry let out a small yelp of surprise. It was a little beat-up goblin. There were small, bloody wounds all over its body. It was breathing heavily and covered in sweat and blood. Goblins were smaller than humans to begin with, but even taking that into account, this one was tiny. Her insights from living with goblins told her she was looking at a child. The goblin child threw a fearful glance over its shoulder, looking back in the direction it had run from. Without even straining her ears, she could hear something else coming through the brush. If the goblin she saw was being hunted, the other had to be the hunter. The goblin frantically worked its cramping legs to hide in the shade of a different tree from Henri and her companions. "Wah, please be quiet," Goku interrupted her, but his eyes never moved. He was keeping close watch on the direction the goblin child had fled from. Less than a minute later, the hunter appeared. It was a magical beast that resembled a huge black wolf. They could tell it was a magical beast because of the chains wrapped around it. The boa constrictor-like chains didn't inhibit the beast at all. They practically seemed like an illusion. The creature also had 2 horns jutting out of its head. Enfira whispered the beast's name. It's a Bargus. There was no way it was answering, but it snorted just like a dog would, and then sneered. The expression was sinister, impossible for a normal animal to make. The beast's eyes slowly scanned the area. They finally looked in the direction of the tree where the goblin child had hidden. If the Bargist had a good nose to match its canine appearance, there was no way it would miss the scent of that much blood. It didn't seem like the goblin child had made it this far because of any ability to fend off the pursuer. The beast was either sadistic or hunting purely for sport. Suddenly, the Bargist stopped. It scrunched up its face in suspicion, then stared at the place where the herbs were growing thickly. Henri shrank back. The others did the same. Behind the tree, Henri opened her hands. Her skin was flecked with green. Enfira was next to her looking at his hands too. The sap from when we were picking herbs, yes, the same intense odor as when Nemu had been crushing them. They had gotten used to it, so their noses didn't notice it anymore. But the intense smell must have been hanging in the air. Her racing heartbeat felt noisy. It's on the move, looks like it's heading away from here. I guess it didn't notice him because of the stink. Listening with an ear against the tree, Henri seemed to have a question. I guess it couldn't pinpoint him because of the smell. What do you mean, boss man? I am pretty sure magical beasts have good noses. That's the point, said Enfira, explaining his idea. Basically, because of the beast's keen sense of smell, it hadn't been able to pinpoint where the pungent smell was coming from. The scent on Henri's and Enfira's hands and bags had mixed with the general smell of the location they had been picking in. And as a lucky bonus, their body odors must have also been covered up. It might have even viewed the crushed herbs as a last-ditch effort by the goblin child to hide. They had a lot to thank the powerful smell for, but it wasn't hard to imagine that if they ran, the smell might follow them and lure the Bargist. If that kid ends up being a sacrifice, then problem solved. As long as we don't know how strong that thing is, it's too risky to interfere. At those cool-headed words, Henri looked over at Goku in spite of herself, but it was a natural thing for him to say. The goblins' #1 priority was Henri's safety. Of course, they would want to avoid combat with that magical beast, even if they needed to sacrifice someone of their own race. There was nothing strange about his statement whatsoever, according to his beliefs, but Henri hated it. Isn't it wrong as a human to not save someone if you can, even someone from a different race? Maybe it was just the foolish idea of a village girl who had never been attacked by goblins and lacked a sense of crisis. She looked at all the other goblins. They must have understood her feelings, but they kept their mouths shut. Next, she looked at Enfira. NFI, he sighed. Let us save him. He might be a good source of information. If we don't find out why he ran all this way, the village might find itself in a tough spot later. The goblins furrowed their brows. We might not be able to beat it, you know, that is true. Barghists come in all different strengths. I heard Barghist leaders are pretty powerful, but from that 1's chains and horns, it doesn't seem too strong. I am sure we could beat a normal Barghist. Hold your horses, the boss lady is here, we should avoid any danger. Henry swallowed. These were foolish words she spoke for her own satisfaction. They would put not only her own life at risk, but other lives too. Still, she had to speak. Abandoning someone you might be able to save is like allying with the attacker. I don't want to be the kind of person who picks on the weak. Please. About the time Kaijari looked at Henry's serious face and sighed in defeat, the magical beast made a strange noise. It was a bark that clearly sneered. Next, they heard the goblin child scream. They no longer had time to hesitate or confer among themselves. Guess we got no choice. Let us go. The goblins leaped out first. Fire followed. Watching the warriors go to battle to make her wish come true, Henry felt a tearing pain in her chest. I can do anything but watch from back here. The least she could do was watch so intently that she didn't even blink. The four who had charged out immediately caught sight of the Barghist, which had tackled the goblin child. The reason the young goblin had new wounds, but wasn't dead, was due to the Barghist's wicked desire to play with its prey. The Barghist stopped moving and looked between the new group and the goblin child. It probably thought it had just been led into a trap. Hey there, puppy dog. Unrai jerked a thumb at himself and said, if you want to play, I'll play with you. Come on. Grrrr, the Barghist growled with open hostility. Out in front, Kaijari drew his machete from his hip in one smooth, natural motion. The other goblins followed suit. Don't hold back. I'll teach you some tricks like down. Ajia. In response to the provocation, the goblin child pinned under the Barghist screamed. The beast didn't talk, but its actions spoke loudly. If you move, I'll kill him. But okay, let us slay this sucker. The three goblins ignored the beast's threat and charged. The Barghist's eyes wavered in confusion at the unexpected turn of events. The Barghist didn't know this, but the goblins hadn't really turned up to save the child. They had simply heard Henry's request and were invested on only it'd be great if we could save him level. If they didn't kill the Barghist now that they faced it head on, it was possible Henry, who was actually most important, could end up hurt as well. That's why they had to slay the beast once and for all. So actually, if it wanted to mess with the goblin child some more, that would mean it was taking pointless actions, which would help them out. Seeing the gleam of the three machetes, the Barghist stopped moving again, realizing the child wouldn't work as a hostage. It wondered whether or not it should finish off the small goblin. Ending his life would be extremely easy. It could kill the child in one bite, but while doing that, its enemy's weapons would definitely come slashing. The danger to the Barghist's life forced it to do one thing. Ignoring the child, it leaped to meet the goblin's attack. The Barghist was heavier than the goblin warriors. The plan was to take advantage of that to tackle them before ripping out their throats, but that immediately went awry. The goblin the Barghist aimed for nimbly dodged. The other two sliced at it with their machetes from either side. The chains wrapped around its body blocked one attack, but the other bit into flesh, spraying blood. At the same time, an open bottle came flying at its snout. Rawr! The Barghist screamed at the awful stench that pierced its eyes and nose. The moment the beast stumbled to a halt, more pain assaulted it. The Barghist could tell from the blood flowing freely from open wounds that the fight was going poorly. With tears in its eyes and a wavering field of vision, the magical creature charged. It aimed at the one who dethroned the bottle, a human, but the charge lasted only a few steps. The bottoms of its paws adhered to the ground and stayed there. Below, a bizarre slime was spread across the earth. The strange liquid didn't soak into the dirt at all. This doesn't have enough adhesive power to hold a strong magical beast. The human urged them to attack all at once. Following the human's urging, the goblins shouted a battle cry and leaped to attack. The human launched powerful magic as well. Rawr! The monster mustered all its strength and ripped its feet away from the ground. The adhesive and the dirt stuck to it, slowing the monster down a little, but it could still fight. Seeing the goblins surrounding it again, the Barghist, which was far more intelligent than regular animals, acknowledged that these goblins were formidable. It was convinced they were different from ordinary goblins. The risk of dying was very real. This Barghist had three basic attacks. It could gouge with its horns, it could bite, and it could tackle and then scratch with its forelegs. That was it. Unlike a stronger Barghist, Its repertoire had no special attacks, but there was one last resort ability. It was an attack that completely abandoned defense. If it didn't connect, it would be the end. At the same time, there was no reason to hold back any longer. The Barghest was merely waiting for the right time to use its ability. After checking the goblins surrounding it, the monster howled madly. Reinforce armor. The human S spell made the goblin's armor glow. The Barghest panicked, guessing it must have been some kind of strengthening spell, but the goblins seemed calm. The warriors charged together in what could be considered a reckless attack. This attack relied heavily on their boosted armor. It wasn't a stupid plan, though. Some might even call it a brave step forward to avoid needless injuries in a protracted battle. That would have been true if the Barghest hadn't been lying in wait for them. If it had been able to make major changes to its expression like a human, the monster would have showed them a satisfied smile. The chains wrapped around its body made slithering noises like a snake. They began to move as if they had come alive. The thick chains swung at a tremendous speed. Even if the special ability Great Chain Whirlwind didn't kill the goblins, it would still deal serious damage. The Barghest was desperate. This was a major skill that it could use only once per day. During the approximately 10 seconds it took for the chains to wind back up, the monster couldn't protect itself with them. This was a very risky move indeed. The unexpected attack caught the goblins off guard, and their evasive maneuvers came too late. It was a fatal error, but duck. A determined order sliced through the air faster than the chains could. The Barghest had bet everything on that one attack. Its eyes widened at the shout from another human. It should have been too late for the goblins to dodge, but they agilely ducked down as if energized by the voice. The Barghest strained its slightly blurred vision, peering at the commander standing behind the caster. Machetes cut into both of its forelegs and one of its hind legs. The monster shrieked at the pain. It managed to wind up the chains and bare its teeth in a menacing way, but the goblins didn't seem the least bit scared. Boss man. We won't need any more support magic. Please just keep an eye on our surroundings. Realizing the battle had been decided, the Barghest tried to run, but its normally agile body was unusually heavy. Of course it was. 3 of its 4 legs were now useless. Still, it struggled to escape, but the goblins wouldn't allow it. Sticky blood spread across the grass, dyeing it red. The smell of iron completely overpowered the odor of the herbs. The Barghest's spilled innards were still so warm they were practically steaming. The goblins shifted their gazes from the dead beast to the child. The little goblin was so heavily wounded, he had completely lost the energy to run, but he had enough mental fortitude to sit up and lean against a tree. "Who are you? What tribe are you from?" he asked, half on guard, half terrified. Henry's goblins looked at one another. They were exchanging glances to decide what sort of attitude would benefit them the most. They also wanted to decide how much information they could give away. But Henry felt there was something else that needed attention first. More importantly, shouldn't we do something about those wounds? What can we do, NFI? The goblin child's injuries seemed deep, and they were still bleeding. Left like this, he would surely die. Henry didn't have any way to save the child, but her hope that her friend would be able to do something was immediately answered. Normal herbs can only stop the bleeding. They can put the lost blood back in, so he'll still be in danger, but Enfira rummaged in his bag. "I have the potion we made with the new method. I should probably give it to Sir Gaun, but can I see the wounds?" Enfira moved swiftly to the front and took out the potion. "What's that freaky-looking juice? Is it poison?" When he saw the purple potion, the goblin child became hostile, though he was still scared. To Henry, and maybe to Enfira as well, it was a perfectly normal reaction. Being wary of something that looked toxic was only natural. But to the goblins, it was apparently unforgivable. They immediately launched into a tirade. "Hey kid, this is our boss lady, who decided to rescue you, and the boss man. You owe your life to these people, so you better watch your mouth. They were trying to help you." The goblin child's eyes flitted to the bare machete blades. He may have been a child, but even he could tell the goblins were in a foul mood. He quickly withered. Henry felt the threats probably weren't necessary for a child, but she was aware that goblins probably had their own way of doing things. Butting in with human common sense was no good in a variety of ways. "I am sorry." Nah, it's fine. Don't worry about it." Enfira sprinkled the potion on the child as he spoke. The cuts all closed right up. "Whoa, what the heck?" It has a gross color, but it works amazing. Then he seemed to catch sight of the goblins looking at him and trembled. Thank you. That's right, kid. Gratitude is important. Great. Now we can tell Sir Gawain that the experiment was a success. Henry and the goblins understood why he was going out of his way to seek their agreement, and they nodded. Enfira was conducting research in potion making with ingredients he received from Aints Ul Gaun, the greatest caster of all time and the village's savior. He wasn't being paid, but someone else provided all the materials. It should have been clear who the results belonged to. There were major issues with Enfira using a potion without permission, but a clinical trial was a fine excuse. He bet if they told Sir Gawain what happened, he would forgive them. But maybe there was some kind of rule for apothecaries. You experimented on me. Henry and Enfira winced as the child interpreted things differently. Of course, someone who didn't know the backstory couldn't help but think that. For those two, it ended with a wince, but others weren't so composed. The goblins seemed to be getting pretty riled up. One of them muttered, "Stupid brat," while he sucked his teeth. Henry gestured for them to calm down. Okay, that's enough. It was a natural reaction for someone who didn't know the situation. They were talking to a kid, so it was no wonder he couldn't grasp the big picture. If you say so, boss lady, shall we get moving? Something else might smell the blood and come over here. We won this time, but boss lady, give us a break, okay? Our mission is to protect you. Seriously, I was surprised when you shouted out too. I think that saved us though, so we can really hey punk, don't be running away. We've got a mountain of questions for you. If you don't want me to cut your legs off, come quietly. Unriot s for the sake of the village, boss lady moan kid. The goblin child trudged forward. His wounds were completely healed, so he didn't have any trouble moving. It was his rebellious spirit slowing him down. Goku, holding his bloody machete, spat on the ground. Henry looked to Enfira for help, but he silently shook his head. Next, she looked at the other goblins, but she was met with steely gazes that said they supported their comrade's actions. Boss lady, don't worry, I won't kill him. I just want to ask him what happened. Besides, do you think he'll make it if we leave him alone here? The question was clearly aimed more at the child than Henry. He seemed to understand. The resistance in his eyes vanished. I get it. I want to run away. Okay, then let us move quickly. Do you know for sure if there was only one Barghest kid? No, there should have been a few ogres too. I don't know if they came after me or not. And don't call me kid. I am Arg, fourth son of chief of the Jeeg tribe. Arg, got it. Kid seems good enough to me, but we can talk later. And we don't need to fight. If he wants us to call him Arg, then wouldn't he doing that help us build some mutual trust? You ray so mature, boss man. All right, let us grab our bags and go. The party followed Kaijari's instructions. Keeping their guard up, they walked in silence. Henry wanted to lighten the mood with some conversation, but the forest wasn't a world that belonged to humans. She couldn't do something so careless when other monsters might be coming after them. The group emerged from the dim forest, with its patches of deep darkness here and there. Bathing in full sunlight banished the tension that had been reigning over Henry's body. She felt relaxed, like there was room to breathe again. For a moment, she keenly sensed that she was back in the human world. Enfira, walking next to her, seemed to feel the same way and let out a deep breath. This breath could have been a sigh or a yawn. The goblin's bristling tension had also faded. Arg was the only one whose expression was still strained. He looked confused by all the sunlight and wide open space. Probably he had been brought up in the forest, where there were plenty of places to hide. The village is that way. Looking in the direction she pointed, Arg frowned. What is that wall? It looks like the structure of ruin. The structure of ruin? Yeah, it is a horrible place that just got built in the woodlands. No one who goes near it comes back alive. I heard there are undead lurking around it. You seem to know quite a lot, considering no one ever comes back alive. When the structure of ruin was still small, a brave warrior from our tribe saw bone monsters building it. Have you ever heard of this place? No, sorry, boss man, but I haven't tea. If we go too far into the woodlands, we might run into a monster even our boss can beat, so we can go in very deep. Hey, so what tribe are you three from? You ray stronger than any goblins I've ever seen. How Arg glanced at Henry. Then he said in a tiny whisper, I think it is a human, but then he asked, so you work for this human? Is that weird? It makes sense to ally with someone strong. She is strong. I mean, I know there are supposedly all levels of humans, but you Ray a girl, right? And the one hiding his face with his hair is a boy? Henry blinked. Do I look like I am not a girl? But if the goblin wasn't sure Enfira was a boy, maybe he had trouble telling us apart. Next to her, Enfira whispered something logical. Henry, this kid probably hasn't seen humans before. He probably doesn't know anything about us besides what other goblins told him.